Welcome everybody to our Weber State University Zoom Career Bites. I am Brett Merrill and I'm from Career Services at Weber State, and I'll be hosting today's webinar. We welcome Weber State students, alumni, and anyone from our neighboring communities. Thank you for joining us. Zoom Career Bites is a weekly webinar that we have every Wednesday from 12 to 12:30, and in that 30 minutes, we have a different executive or different managers from private and public sector. They present to us upon specific topics that'll help us to develop our job search strategies, our job search skills, helping us to find that perfect job, helping us to build our career. So within the first 30 minutes is a presentation period within there. After that, there's also a period for Q&A if you have any questions that had not been answered. In today's presentation, as we go along, we're going to make it a little bit more interactive. And at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a tab button for chat and for questions for Q&A. And you can use those if you want to ask today's presenter any questions as we go along. And so he'll try and address those as we work. And at the end, if there's anything that has not been addressed, we'll talk about it. So let me introduce our presentation today. How many times has someone told you that you need to get on LinkedIn? But then you wonder, well, why? Or when I do, what is it all about? And then when many of us get onto LinkedIn, we go in, put our photo on and put a brief overview of our career, and then we don't know what else to do with it. If used correctly, LinkedIn can really help us to have very effective job search efforts. They can help us build a personal brand, help us to sell ourselves. And then it can help us to really strengthen our own career. And to help us understand how to do this, we're very excited to have as today's presenter, Kyle Pohl. Kyle currently leads sales for LinkedIn Learning across North America, and he's led various teams in his 8-year career at LinkedIn, and has spoken to thousands of students and educators, professionals throughout the world about LinkedIn's ability to connect the world's professionals and make them more productive and successful. We're really excited that Kyle is one of our own at Weber State. He received his bachelor's degree from Weber State and then his MBA from the Marriott School of Business at BYU. He served as student body president at both Weber State and Marriott School. He's a father of 4.5, a husband of 1. And before this global pandemic began, he and his family lived in New York City, where he led the sales for LinkedIn Learning. But he also coached the famous West Side Lightning, which is a 3 to 8-year-old soccer team that over the past years, Kyle tells me, has never lost a single game. But then he also admits that they haven't won one either. So he's excited that when all this is over, that he can get back to his city and get back to his team and get back on a regular kind of level playing field. But today, he's ours. So Kyle, thank you for being here, and let me turn the time over to you.
Oh, thank you so much, Brett. Excuse me. I'm thrilled to be here with some fellow Wildcats. It's a great day to be a Wildcat. I loved every minute of my time at Weber State. It transformed and changed me in so many ways, and I'm grateful any chance and any opportunity I get to spend time with my good friends at Weber State. I mentioned the West Side Lightning team there because it's a pretty fearsome team. We started, almost 5 years ago now, and that little squad of misfits that we had together, we haven't found a team to play yet, but when we do, we will be prepared. New York's a fun place. I would encourage all of you who are at Weber State and thinking Utah is the place to be. I think Utah is an amazing place, and we may end up back here someday. I'm actually in Provo right now, of all places, but we found ourselves in New York. We've been there 12 years now, and we've absolutely loved the experience that we've had out there. And I think it's nice to see a number of folks here. I can see the attendees, and I want to see if our chat feature, our Q&A feature is working. I saw somebody put a chat in there, which is super helpful. So let's try this. Let's try using the chat. And I'm going to give you 3 options, and I'd like you to rank in order of preference what you'd like me to talk about today. Because I'm here for you. I have no agenda in terms of what I want to talk about. I have a number of things I could talk about, but I want to make sure I'm doing my best to hit the mark for what you guys care about. So let me give you 3 things and have you rank these in order of priority, how much you'd like to hear about them. So the first thing I could talk about would be general career advice, just talking about career and how you think about moving forward and advancing your career and also finding the right career for you. So that would be one topic. The next topic I could talk about would be finding a job, specifics around what do you do to find a job, especially when you're coming out of school. And then the third that I could talk about, and I'll probably weave a little bit of all 3 of these in, but it will help me know where to spend most time. So the third would be specifically about LinkedIn, okay? So those are the 3. It would be finding a job, general career advice, and LinkedIn. So in the chat, if you just give the ranking, so if you think, hey, I want to hear about LinkedIn more than anything else, say LinkedIn, and then whatever's next, job, and then career. So those are the 3 things: job, we're finding a job, LinkedIn, and career advice. So let's take a look at what's coming in here. All right, enhance profile. Okay, so LinkedIn. All right, career advice, LinkedIn, job specifics, LinkedIn, general career advice, LinkedIn career, LinkedIn career job, finding jobs, LinkedIn career. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so it feels like a mix of all 3, which is great news. I can chat a little bit about all 3. It sounds like we had a little bit more around finding a job in there, and certainly some stuff about LinkedIn. So let's do that. Let's talk about all 3. I think from the finding a job perspective, let's start there, because that's where I assume most of you are. You're in something right now. You know, you're at Weber State. I assume a good share of you are working, right? Like at Weber State, then a good share of our students work while they went through school. I know I certainly did. But what you're doing right now may not be what you're looking to do after you graduate. You may be looking for something else. And so when I guess I'd ask a question for you guys to think about. And I love that we have the chat going here, so you guys can put your answers up here in the chat. And you know, the winners will get a free T-shirt that I'll throw out. If we were in person, I'd bring some T-shirts and toss them out. Everyone gets excited about those, but virtually I'll throw you a virtual T-shirt. So, what do you think the number 1 way is that people find jobs in the U.S.? What's the number 1 way? Throw your answers out there in the chat. Let's see what you say. Network, okay. Networking, who you know, great. And if you're, okay, networking, a lot of networking coming through. Now, so say that you are the talent acquisition organization, right? So you're at a big company, you're hiring a bunch of people, and you are identifying how you've hired different people. So you have job boards where you post jobs online and people apply to them. You have direct to your website where they come to you. You have referrals that come through. You know, you have advertisements you put out there. What do you think the number 1 way is that companies will identify for finding people? Job boards, okay. Referral, okay. Word of mouth, okay. Word of mouth linked to networking, linked to referrals. So referrals is it. Referrals is how most people are found. It's how most jobs are found. And that links into what you guys all shared about networking. And it's also the number 1 way that if you talk to a hiring manager, when we talk about the word hiring manager, there's a difference between recruiter and hiring manager. Not everyone knows the nuance. So let me explain it. So the hiring manager is the person who you would actually be working for, right? It would be your boss. And that is the person who makes the decision as to who they hire, right? The person who's going to be on their team. We call them a hiring manager, because they're the manager who makes the hiring decision. Now, recruiters are the people that many times you'll see at job fairs, right? Their job is to go out and find the right people, bring them in, and then pass them along to the hiring managers. The hiring managers then interview and decide who they'd like to hire, okay? So if you're a hiring manager, then chances are you want to hire by a referral. And the reason you want to hire through a referral is why? Well, it's because you have somebody that can vouch for that person. Somebody who can say, you know what, I've worked with Brett before. He's fantastic. He's really good. He's really sharp, really on the ball, detail oriented, whatever it is. They can tell you something about that person that's somewhat objective, right? When you interview someone and they tell you those things about yourself, I could tell you all day I'm detail oriented in an interview, but I may not be. And people who I've spoken with would know that, right? And so I think you want to think about that right now. You want to think about, chances are the majority of jobs that you'll find throughout your life and your career will come as a result of your network and come as a result of you being referred by someone into that organization. And I'll tell you, that's how basically all of my professional jobs have come. I say professional jobs, meaning beyond college. I had a whole bunch of jobs before I graduated from college, and those all came from a variety of different ways. But since then, the jobs that I've had, I started as a financial advisor, went back to business school for a few years. And after that, went to American Express, and now I'm at LinkedIn. I've had a number of jobs at LinkedIn. But all those jobs have come as a result of my network. And there's another term that I want to tie in here when we think about finding a job and think about your career, and it's personal brand. And I'd love for, in the chat there, could a few of you write, what do you think personal brand is? Like, write your definition of personal brand. What I'm known for. I like it. Kimberly, fantastic. I'll wait for a couple more to come in here. Passions, okay. What do you like about working for LinkedIn? Glad to talk about that, Liz. So let's talk about that personal brand. So I love the idea that you share there, Kimberly, of what am I known for? If you think about your personal brand is something that you create each and every day. Think about the big brands that you know of, right? Think of Nike, think of Walmart, think of Amazon. These brands all stand for something. Now, they've put a lot of work into creating those brands and making it so when you think of that brand, you think of something very specific, right? Now, what happens is in our own lives, we're creating our brands every day. But a lot of times we don't have our own brand marketing group who's thinking every day about how do I impact or influence the Kyle Paul brand so that it's such that people like and want to hire and work with Kyle Paul, right? It's my job each and every day to figure out how I craft that brand. And the brand is exactly that. It's what other people think about you. Right? It's not what I think about myself or what I think other people think about you. It's actually what they would say about me when I'm not in the room. It's what they would say about me when they're trying to decide whether or not to hire me. And so what I want you to think about right now is, what is my personal brand? And why is that so important now while you're in school? Well, the answer is, there's a good chance that the people you're interacting with right now, whether it's classmates, professors, other networks from your current job, are going to be the people who determine what job you will get. And I say that because I want to tell you how I found my job at LinkedIn. I went to business school at BYU, did my MBA there, and interacted with hundreds of different students and classmates and others. And I had good relationships with all of them. But you obviously can't be very best friends with everyone, right? And so there's some people you know really well and some people you know a little bit less than others. But there was a guy named Ryan Giles. Ryan Giles, I knew him okay. We were good, we were friends, but we weren't very close friends in business school. But because of the personal brand that I had, because of what he thought about me, several years later, this is like 4 years after business school, he went to LinkedIn. And when he went to LinkedIn, he was there for a few months and he thought, I need to reach out to Kyle. I think Kyle would be a great fit for what we're building here at LinkedIn. I knew nothing about LinkedIn. I hadn't talked with Ryan for a long time. But because of my relationship with him, because of my personal brand, he came to me and said, you should come work here. Now, in a million years, I never would have thought that Ryan Giles would have been the guy to change my life. But he was, and he changed my life in a lot of great ways. And I'm really grateful to him for it. We're still very close. But I say that because you don't know right now who from your network is going to be that Ryan Giles, who's going to create an opportunity for you. But what you do know is that the brand that you create every day, the way that you talk, the way that you interact, the way that you help your teams and the different groups and projects that you're working on, the different things that you do will determine what other people think about you, and thus whether or not they refer you or recommend you for a job. So how does that tie into networking and looking for a job? Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about LinkedIn and how you can use LinkedIn to network. But even beyond LinkedIn, what I would recommend you do is first figure out what your personal brand is. And the best way to figure this out is by asking people in your network. Who are the people that you interact with? Who are the people who would be in a position to recommend you for a job or for anything else? And do what we call a 360 assessment. You can look online if you want, and you just Google like personal brand 360 assessment, and you'll get some great tools there for questions to ask. But what I'd do is I'd go ask some people and just say, hey, I'd love for you to fill this thing out and just share what you think about me as somebody you'd potentially work with. And as you get this feedback, take that feedback as a gift of giving you the direction of knowing, is this the brand I want to create for myself? Is this what I want other people to think about me? And if it is, then fantastic, you're heading in the right direction. If there are some surprises in there, and there always are, there have been for me when I've done these exercises myself, it gives you a great gift of what you can change. So once you understand that, once you're thinking about your personal brand and what it is and what you want it to be, now it's time to go find the job. Well, I'm going to work in LinkedIn now to show you how I would use LinkedIn to help figure out what job I want to find. Okay. Now, if you're anything like me, then you're sitting there in school going through all your classes and you're focused on, getting through your operations class or getting through that marketing class and trying to figure out how to balance your, your balance sheet in your accounting class. And you're not thinking a lot. You're not spending a lot of time on a daily basis thinking about like, what's my career? What are the different companies I want to work for? Now, I don't want to tell you not to focus on your schoolwork. I don't want to tell you not to focus on doing well and getting good grades. Those things are important. But I would recommend that you spend some real time thinking specifically about your career. And I tell you that because it's one of these do as I say, not as I do moments. My dad used to always say that, do as I say, not as I do, right? Like I didn't do that. And I wish I would have done more of it. I would have been better prepared for the conversations that I had with recruiters and with hiring managers when I was interviewing. And I also would have been better prepared thinking about what I want to do. I'll share this little Venn diagram with you. And let me share my screen here and you guys can take a look at what this looks like. Someone shared this with me years ago, and I thought it's been pretty illustrative of how you can think about what you want to do for your career. All right. So when you think about your career and what it is you want to do, so my encouragement to you is spend some time thinking about three things, okay? First, think about what am I good at or what could I learn to be good at, right? Like for me saying, hey, I really love basketball and like I want to be an NBA player. Well, I'm actually not that great of a basketball player, right? Like, and even if I spend a lot of time, like I don't have the physical capacity to do that. So think about something that you are good at or could be good at. Next, think about what do you care about and what do you love doing? Is there something that you really get a lot of enjoyment out of doing, or that through giving to something, it actually means a lot to you? And then third, think of what will people pay you to do, right? So to have a great career and one that's very fulfilling, if you can find something that's at the apex of those three things, that brings those three things together, then man, you're loving life. You're in that purple Weber moment there, and that's where happiness comes. I've been told that true happiness is being excited to go to work in the morning and being excited to come home from work at night, right? And well, right now we're in this work from home pandemic environment where my work is at home and I'm always at home. But before that, I had that. And someone asked me, what do I enjoy about working at LinkedIn? I think there's two things that come out most for me. And I think one is that we're changing the world in a positive way. When we think about our vision is to create economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce. And that's really inspiring to me. And then beyond that, I actually really enjoy going to work in the morning. And I'm very grateful to say that I really enjoy coming home to my family at night. And it's been a journey to get there. And I've certainly had jobs where I didn't feel that way all the time, but I feel that at LinkedIn. And so what I would say is spend some time right now thinking about those three things and what are the types of companies and the types of occupations that could bring those three things together. Now, will it always happen? Probably not. And it won't be perfect. You'll have rough days. But at the end of the day, as close as you can get to doing those three things, I think will put you in a good spot. Now, once you've started to think about those things, I mean, an exercise that you can do and that I've done before is like specifically just writing down those three things, right? Like, what am I good at? Write a list. What do I love doing? And then what will people pay me to do? Right. And so I made a list for me, and, I've got ping pong down there on what I'm good at. And relative to a lot of people, I'm pretty good at ping pong, but not good enough to where everyone's going to pay me for it. Right. And team sports is something I enjoy, but I'm not that good at it. But where I find those three things coming together, well, for me, at least, I've found that it's in leading a sales team. I've got a team of about 100 folks who are out there selling something called LinkedIn Learning. If you haven't seen it, hop on and take a look. It's an amazing resource with over 16,000 courses to help you learn about pretty much anything related to your profession. So a lot of the things I'm sharing today, you can find full courses on LinkedIn Learning with instructors who are way better than I am. But for me, that's what I've found, is I've found a world where I've been able to bring those three things together and find a lot of fulfillment from what I do. So what do you do? How do you actually do this? Well, I'm going to show you on LinkedIn what you can actually do to try and find these things. Okay. Let me share my screen again, and I'll go over here to LinkedIn. Now, I hope all you have LinkedIn profiles. I'm not going to spend a bunch of time today talking about how to create a great LinkedIn profile. It's very easy for you to learn about that. If you even just Google create a great LinkedIn profile. You can also go to linkedin.com/university. There's all kinds of great resources from LinkedIn with great tips about how to build a strong profile. But what I'm going to share today is, assuming you have your LinkedIn profile set up, what you can actually do to find a job, and also to meet some great people and to learn more about what it is you want to do for your career. So the first thing I'd start by doing is start by the things that you've already thought about. Like, what are the jobs that you might want to have? For me, when I was starting college, I wanted to be a dentist. I'm so glad I didn't choose that. The reason I didn't is because I ended up going out with a bunch of dentists and watching what they did. And I was like, I realized that the only reason I ever wanted to do that is because when I was 10 years old, some guy who was an oral surgeon, can't believe he did this to a bunch of 10-year-olds, but maybe it was 12-year-olds, in a Sunday school class, he told us he made $1,000 an hour. And I was like, wow, I want to make $1,000 an hour. So I decided I was going to be an oral surgeon. And that was the reason I made the decision. But once I looked at those three things that I said, like, what am I good at? What would I enjoy? And what could I be paid for? Like, two of the things didn't align. Getting paid, yeah, that was there. But I would have hated it. I wouldn't have been good at it. It just wouldn't have been a great career for me. So think about the things you're already thinking about, and then go find people who are doing that and ask them, tell me about your job. What do you like about it? What don't you like? What's challenging? How did you get to where you are today? So now I'm going to show you how you can do that on LinkedIn. And I think personally, as a student, this is the most powerful thing that you can use on LinkedIn, bar none. When I was graduating, LinkedIn had just barely been born. LinkedIn was born in 2003. I graduated Weber State in 2004. So there weren't enough people to do this on LinkedIn. I'd never even heard of it at the time. But you have this resource now, and you should definitely use it. So I'm going to show you how to use it. What you should do today, when we're done with this call, as soon as you have a moment, get on LinkedIn and go to Weber State University. Go to your school's page, okay? If you haven't been there, you should definitely go there and check it out. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of great content on here that Weber State shared, and you can feel free to go through all that. But where I want you to go is directly to the Alumni tab, okay? This is where the good stuff is. If you go to Alumni, you are going to see 73,000 almost people who have gone to Weber State. And because you go to Weber State and you're a student there, they are going to be thrilled to help you, because guess what? People like to help others. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to figure out, what type of people do I want to talk with? Now, what's amazing about this is you can now filter these 73,000 people by where they live, where they work, what they do, what they studied, and what the kind of skills they have, and even what kind of connections we have to them. Okay? So let's say that I decide, you know what? I would really like to work in sales. Okay, I know that's what all you guys want to do is you want to come join the world of sales. So once you click on sales, you're now going to see here's 6,700 people who work in sales. Right now, I can then see the companies that they work for. So let's say I say, hey, you know what? I'd love to work for Pluralsight. Great company. We actually deal with Pluralsight all the time. They're a fantastic company that's apparently hired a lot of Weber State graduates. So you can now go to Pluralsight and say, hey, here's 58 alumni who work here. And you scroll down and you see who these people actually are. You see the names of the folks who work for Pluralsight right now and who went to Weber State. Now you see this guy here, that's actually my cousin, Bryson. But let's say you don't know some of these people. I've never met Colin before. This is critical, this piece, okay? Finding these people is one thing, but reaching out to them is the next. Now I'm gonna tell you that I've told this to thousands of students, and my guess is dozens have actually taken the advice. Those who have, many have come back to me and said, thank you so much, it was super helpful. Most of you probably aren't gonna do this, but I hope that those of you who do will find great value from it, because it is the one thing that I should have done more of when I was in school. So here's what you do. Let's say Colin's my guy. That's who I want to talk to. He's an account executive at Pluralsight. I'm going to click on Colin. And instead of connecting with him immediately, I'm going to look at his profile. I'm going to say, oh, look at this guy. All right, 5 years at Pluralsight. He's been there for a while. He's at Fidelity before that. Here he is at Weber State, 2005 to 2008. Look, he speaks German. All right, so I'm going to learn a few things about him. If there's anything that we have in common, I'm going to mention that. Now, the one thing I know we do have in common is we both went to Weber State, so if you've got nothing else, you can use that. But let's say I speak German too. I say, hey, I saw you speak German as well. But what you're going to do is you're going to connect with him, add a note. Don't just connect without adding a note. And in the note, you're going to say, Colin, I found your profile on LinkedIn. I was very impressed by what I saw. All right, start with that. I was very impressed by what I saw. I saw you speak German. I speak German as well. And I also saw that you went to Weber State. I'm a student there right now. And I would love to learn more about you, your career, and how you got to where you are today. Would you be willing to take 20 minutes with me? Thank you very much, Kyle. That's it. Send that thing off. Colin's going to respond. Now, not every Colin will respond, but I would say probably about half of the Colins out there will respond. And that's okay. You need to send about 30 of these to get the conversations that you need. All right? Because out of the 30 you send, you'll probably have 15 who respond. And of those 15, you'll probably get conversations with 5 or so. But when you have that conversation, this is all important. So once you got that conversation, by the way, those who just accept the invitation, but don't respond saying you can have 20 minutes, immediately respond to them and say, hey, thanks for accepting my connection request. Can we take 20 minutes to talk more about your career? I want to learn about you. Now, here's what's important to remember. In this conversation, it's super critical. You are not asking for a job. You are asking for advice and asking to learn about them, okay? So in those 20 minutes, Colin, thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. Like I mentioned, very impressed with your background, and would just love to learn more about your journey at Pluralsight and your career journey in general. Ask him some questions, get him talking about himself, ask him about what are the things I can do to prepare for a career like this? How can I prepare myself? What are some classes I should take? Ask him all the questions you can come up with. When you get to the end of that 20 minutes, say, hey, we're coming up on the end of that 20 minutes. Thank you so much for your time. You've been very helpful. I have one last question to ask you. And I would end every one of these conversations with this question. The question is this: Colin, thank you for your time. I have one more question. Is there anyone else you feel that I should be talking with? What that question does is it gives Colin the option. It's a very light way to say, Colin, you could do 3 things. You could say, you know what? Kyle, you're doing the right thing. Keep on reaching out. Find other people like me. All the best, my friend. Tap on the head and off I go. I learned something from him. I'm grateful, but he's not giving me anything else, and that's fine. The second thing you could say is, yeah, I actually have some buddies working over at MarketStar, and I think that'd be a great fit for you. You should talk to them. I'll put you in touch with them. All of a sudden, your job of cold outreach to people on LinkedIn got a lot easier because Colin gives you a referral. You're part of his network now. The third thing, and this is the gold mine, it's when Colin says, yeah, you should talk to my recruiter. We're hiring for people right out of Weber State or out of college, and I'd love to put you in touch. You could be a great fit here at Pluralsight. All right, he can do any one of those things. Whichever one he does is fine. But what you're going to learn, the more of these conversations you have, the more you're going to understand, one, most importantly, is this something I want to do? Is working at Pluralsight the kind of place I'd like to work? 2, do I have what it takes? Is this the type of thing I could do? And 3, would I actually enjoy this? Okay, so my encouragement to all of you is to use your network, to leverage LinkedIn to expand your network, because you never know who's going to be that Ryan Giles in your life that might open the door to what could be a really fulfilling career for you. And I also want to open my door and let you all know that, as a graduate of Weber State and someone who cares a great deal about the wonderful people who are going through Weber State, as well as the faculty and staff that make it such an amazing university, I'm happy to help you in a way I can. Feel free to reach out to me, connect with me, and let me know if I can help you in any way. So with that said, thank you very much for the time. Brett, I appreciate being here, and it sounds like we might have some time to take some questions.
You bet. So if you have any questions, you can serve them up through the Q&A at the bottom. And I've got a couple for you, Kyle.
Yeah, sounds great.
You talked about networking. How do I expand my network? You talked about going and searching for people that's there. Is there any other way to expand that network?
Yeah. You're gonna hate this this analogy, and I hate it myself that I'm even using it. But think of the world of those multi-level marketers, right? And that pyramid scheme and that idea of like, hey, if you just find your 3 friends and have them find 3 friends, then all of a sudden you're going to be rich. Now, put that all aside, because I'm not recommending that anyone goes down that path to sell things. But what I am recommending is that you use that same mindset, right? The best way to expand your network is through the network you already have. Right? So what I just showed you is a great way to start reaching out when you don't know anyone in an industry. For example, Pluralsight, I may not know anyone who works there, but I want to learn more about that. So I'm going to go there and find someone via LinkedIn. Now, the best thing to do is to go on LinkedIn and search through all the connections you have right now and say, who could I talk to first that already knows me? That conversation, that imaginary conversation I had with Colin was great, but I didn't know him. But think if Colin's actually one of my buddies. What if he's the son or the dad of one of my good friends, right? Like if I can go and start there and have that same conversation I just shared with you, but the critical piece for expanding your network is what I shared at the very end. That last question of, hey, Mr. Green, who's lived up the street from me all my life, I didn't realize was an accountant, and that's what I want to do. Thanks so much for taking the time to tell me all about your career in accounting. I'm sorry I lived next to you for 18 years and never asked you a single question about it, but this has been helpful. Is there anyone else you feel like I should be talking with? And all of a sudden, Mr. Green from up the street is sharing a network of his with you. He's connecting with people that will help guide you as you go for your career. Now, guess what? When you have the conversation with Mr. Green's colleague down the road or down the hall, Mr. Brown, how do you end that conversation with Mr. Brown? You say, Mr. Brown, that's been super helpful. I really appreciate the help. Is there anyone else you feel like I should be talking with? If you always end with that, is there anyone else you feel like I should be talking with? You're going to continue to expand that network, and make sure as you do, you connect with these people on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is now at the point we have close to 700 million members. There are very few professionals in the United States who are not members of LinkedIn, and it's a very common business practice to connect with people on LinkedIn. You will not offend people, especially someone you've spoken with, by connecting with them on LinkedIn. So every time you have a conversation like this, make sure you connect with them on LinkedIn, because then that will also give you an idea of what's going on with that network. As you keep engaged with that network, you should also think about, how do I then add value to that network? If you're continually adding value to your network, people will think of you as someone as having that personal brand of someone they want to recommend.
Great, thank you very much. Liz asked a question on the chat. She talked about she's not very active in her profile yet, but recently added more connections. How do I get people to endorse me without having to ask?
It's a really good question, Liz. What I'll tell you, I don't have stats behind this, but based on my experience in talking with others, I would say the majority of the actual endorsements, right? When someone recommends you on LinkedIn, the majority of those actually come from someone asking, right? Sometimes somebody will proactively just say, man, Liz, it has been great working with you. I'm going to write you an endorsement on LinkedIn. But that's normally not what people think at first. So now there is a difference between endorsing a skill and giving a recommendation. Okay. So the recommendations are where people actually write something about you. Okay. And say, hey, it's been great working with you. And the endorsements come where you put skills on your profile. So I'll talk about both. First, for endorsements, you need to put skills on there for people to endorse. Now, I don't think a lot of people proactively say, hey, would you endorse me for these? I do think there's some reciprocity there where like you go endorse someone for skills that they have and they look at your profile and say, hey, I'll endorse you for your skills. But I would actually put some thought into recommendations. Here's how I think about recommendations. When somebody comes to you and says, you did an excellent job, Liz, and whether that's in school, like you have a professor you have a great relationship with and says, you know what, you've been a fantastic student. Maybe it's at work and someone says, you've gone above and beyond and been really helpful. That's a great opportunity for you to say, you know what, I really appreciate that. It would mean a lot to me if you could put a few words into writing and put that on my LinkedIn profile. I ask for that all the time. When people come to me, I'll get this a lot where people will say, hey, I work with this sales rep who was fantastic. I just wanted to talk to her leader and let her know that. Then I'll say, hey, thanks for sharing that with me. Would you put that on their LinkedIn profile? That'd mean a lot to them. And so I think that takes a little nudge from a lot of people. But when people are already proactively saying you're doing a great job, it's a great opportunity to say, you know what, I'd love for other people to see how I've shown up with you. Could you put that on my profile?
Great. Thank you very much, Kyle. Hey, Kyle, there's a question from Ben. Ben's question is, I've heard that recruiters feel Weber State students don't measure up to students from other larger schools, such as University of Utah. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, it's a great question, Ben. You know, I will say that every recruiter and every organization is going to be different. They're going to have different bias, and whether those are conscious bias or unconscious biases, then they're going to think certain things about people who come from schools because of what they know and what they're familiar with. Now, I will say that there's a huge concern that I have with that in general. I think what it's created is not just by school bias, but also by racial bias. I think there's a major opportunity gap in the United States, and we at LinkedIn are trying to do everything we can to help close that gap, which would, to our vision that I mentioned earlier, of creating economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce, whether you're white, black, brown, or whether you went to Harvard, Yale, University of Utah, or Weber State. There are amazingly talented people throughout the world with very different educational backgrounds. And our goal is to create a digital representation of the global economy such that that capital, and we'll call that human capital, meaning the best talent can flow freely to where it's needed most, not based on credentials, on academic credentials, right? But based on actual skills and ability. Now, that's the vision and that's the goal. Is that the reality? Unfortunately, no. There are all types of biases that people will have about where you're from, where you grew up, where you went to school. And those are things that we all carry with us regardless of who we are. Now, what I would say is coming from somewhere like Weber State, and I know this myself, having come from Weber State, and and having conversation with different people. When I worked at American Express right out of business school, then almost everyone that I worked with in the leadership program I was in came from some of the top 20 MBA schools in the nation. And I was like, geez, I went to Weber State and BYU, like this podunk schools out in Utah. Like, I don't know if I can measure up. What I found is like, everyone's human. Everyone's just like us. We're all fallible and we all learn things in the same way. And I found very quickly that I had every bit the ability and capacity that my peers from these other places had. So I think for me, the first thing was overcoming that perception that I wasn't good enough because of my background, where I'd come from. I think the next thing is doing things to help others recognize you where you might not stand out. And I think that's where one of the challenges is, because if there's that perception that, hey, people are more inclined to hire folks from Utah, from University of Utah, or from BYU, or from Stanford, wherever it is, know that we probably need to do something extra to change their perception and to help them understand that there are fantastic people coming out of Weber State. And the way you do that is through what I just described. I think it's getting in touch with people who work at that organization who can say, you know what, I know we normally go to the University of Utah, but there's a really strong applicant. I've got this gal who comes from Weber State. You should really take a look at her. If you can get someone in the organization saying that on your behalf, all of a sudden you've got a leg up on all the applicants from University of Utah. So it does take a little bit of extra effort, but I will say at LinkedIn, some of the best folks that we've had on our team have come from schools that no one's ever heard of. And some of the folks who have really struggled, who have come with their Ivy League degrees in hand, who have said, hey, look at what I've done and look at my degree, that's going to sell a lot of product for me, and it doesn't.
Great. Yeah, it was great feedback. All right, guys. Thank you very much for your chat, your questions, your comments. And Kyle, thank you for taking the time. You've given great. I mean, I want to tell everybody what Kyle told us today is pearls of wisdom, that the power of networking, the power of getting people to get behind you, to be your advocates, is far stronger, far more powerful, has greater return on your efforts than just applying for 100 jobs on a job board within there. Anything else that you may do, that's where the power comes. It doesn't mean that you don't necessarily apply for those jobs, but you get someone that works at organization, you get them connect with you, you get them to be a believer in you, and then they can help give you that recommendation. They can help refer you to the right people for those jobs that you're interested in. Kyle, thank you very much. It's been fantastic.
Thank you, Brett, and thanks to all of you who joined, and thanks for the great questions. And like I said, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Kyle Paul out there that spells it P-O-L-L, and I'm happy to help any way I can. All the best to you guys. Have a wonderful summer.
Thank you. Hey guys, next week on Wednesday, 12 to 12:30, we have the same Zoom Career Bytes webinar. Use the same link to access today. Share it with friends, share it with family, share it with people that you know are looking for jobs or maybe looking for the jobs. Next week, we have two individuals who lead recruiting at Hill Air Force Base. They're going to be talking to us about how to keep your job search going when hiring slows down. And hiring has slowed down a lot of companies. And so I think this would be a very timely topic for a lot of your associates to join with us on. Great. Thank you for joining us, everyone. Kyle, been perfect. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Take care, Brett. Thank you.